Right now we need to talk about the ingredients that you're going to use to make your homebrewed beer. The ingredients are simple, there's only 4 of them. The primary ingredient to making the beer that you need to go out and buy is malt extract. You're going to buy malt extract in the liquid form, or you're going to buy malt extract in a dry form, or if you're buying a kit, more than likely it'll have a little of both. This is a lot easier to count out and weigh than the liquid, so it comes that way. The liquid's easier to dissolve in the water, so we usually use some of this and some of that. It's all the same product, it's all malt extract. It's full of sugars that are going to be turned into alcohol by the yeast during the fermentation process. Another kind of malt that might come in your homebrew kit is malt that looks like this, which is a grain product. It's often used in home brewing to color the beer, to make the beer darker, or to give it more body or more texture, or to give it a little better head retention. The second ingredient we need to talk about for making your beer is hops. Hops are the flower of a plant that grows similar to a vine. When you buy hops in the homebrew shop, they're going to come in a little packet similar to this. Looks like a little potato chip bag. Hops are processed by drying them and then making them into little tiny pellets that look like rabbit droppings, or into whole flower or cone hops. Hops are little green pellets like this. They have a terrific aroma, and when first time you smell the hops, you're going to see that the aroma of the hop is what makes the beer taste like beer. When you have the flavor and aroma of the hop, you will recognize that as beer. If you had a fermented beverage that didn't have hops in it, you would have a different beverage. It wouldn't be beer. Almost all the beer that you buy has hops as the flavoring component, and that's why we recognize that. The hops also might come in a package looking like this, which is a whole hop. It's just the bigger piece before it's made into a pellet. When hops are grown, they're marked with a number on them, and that tells you how bitter they are, or how potentially bitter they are if you boil it into your wort for a really long time. When you're boiling the wort, which is what we call the beer before it starts to ferment, when you're boiling the wort, with the recipe that you have, you'll put in the appropriate amount of hops at the beginning of the boil. That will give you your bitterness. You'll put the appropriate hops in at the end of the boil for aroma, and some recipes will have you put in hops all through different stages, and that gives you different amounts of flavor with varying amounts of bitterness. Without a little bitterness, bitterness is not a bad word, without a little bit of bitterness, you wouldn't recognize the beer as beer. It would just taste like Zima, and we wouldn't want that, would we? The next important ingredient that we need to talk about for your beer is you need to put yeast in the beer. Without yeast, we wouldn't have alcohol. So yeast, and little package of yeast like this, are living organisms. Yeast are our friends. There are billions of cells of yeast in every one of these packages, and handled correctly, they'll happily make alcohol out of the sugar in your beer. So we're going to take our beer ingredients, we're going to take the malt, we're going to take the hops, we're going to take the yeast, and the only ingredient left to talk about is water. Water is an incredibly important ingredient because it's 90 or 95% of your beer. If you don't have good water, don't brew with it, you're wasting your time. If your water tastes like blood because it's full of iron, make sure you filter it. People who live in the southeast part of the United States have that problem. If your water is very salty, a lot of places around have very salty water, make sure you filter it. You want to make sure that you have good tasting water, or you can't make good tasting beer.